Hey, Hammy here, part 2 of section 2.1 of your textbook. In this video we're going to take a closer look at carbon and organic compounds and why they're important for life. First thing to understand, when we talk about life here on Earth, it's based on this cool little atom or the element carbon. And the compounds that contain carbon we call organic compounds. Okay, so one common theme or element in all of organic compounds is the atom carbon. Okay, and it's the main component. As we look at the four main classes of organic compounds in living things, here you'll see carbon, 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 and more carbon. Why carbon? If you look down here at the atomic structure of carbon, we see that carbon is atomic number 6 and it's got a mass of 12. Now remember, the atomic number tells us that there are 6 protons. So you see down here 1, 2, 3, 4, and the other 2 are hidden behind there. So there's 6 positive protons. It has a mass of 12, so 12 minus 6 is 6 neutrons. So that are these kind of tannish colored balls here. Okay, so we have 6 tan protons. If you have 6 positive protons, that leaves 6 negative electrons. Remember, we put them in levels around the atom. So the first 2, 1, 2, are in the first level of the atom, and then the next 4 go in the second level. So 1, 2, this is at electron 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now remember, you may have heard the octet rule before with these valence electrons, and I mentioned it in the previous video, that you need to have a full valence shell or outer shell to be stable. Look, electron has 1, 2, 3, 4 lonely electrons that aren't paired up. There are 4 spots that it can form a covalent bond with another atom. So the cool thing about carbon is that it can form these long chains. So carbon can bond to itself, carbon to carbon to carbon to carbon to carbon to carbon bond, and it will also bond readily to other things. So here you see it bonding to nitrogen. It can form double bonds. There's a double bond with oxygen, and it can also form rings, ring-like structures. Okay, so here you see glucose, okay, C6H12O6, if you would count up all the atoms, and you see that the carbons along with this oxygen here, it has formed a ring-like structure. So the ability to form chains and rings and have 4 covalent bonds with other things make it very, very versatile, and it's kind of the basis for all of life here on Earth. In this chapter, we're going to mention 4 main organic compounds when it comes to living things. The first one here, carbohydrates. This includes the sugars and starches. They are often what I call the CHO. Okay, the CHO, which is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Like glucose was C6H12O6. So CH and O, it's made up of those 3 atoms, mainly for energy, and we'll look at some other uses as well. The second one is lipids, which would be your fats and oils. Okay, they are also CHOs, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They store energy, okay, form cell membranes, carry messengers. We'll look a little bit later in the next video at those. Number 3, proteins. Proteins are used for enzymes which speed up chemical reactions, antibodies, and just structural purposes. Our hair, nails, skins is all made up of proteins. Proteins are CHONs, you know, CHO and CHON. CHONs, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. And here you can see some of their functions. And the fourth one we'll look at this chapter are nucleic acids, DNA, RNA, and if some of you know that what DNA stands for, deoxyribo, nucleic acid. Okay, so these are obviously our genetic material. Okay, and they are CHO Chomp, chonop, okay? Chonop, almost like chomp, only with an N. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus. And we'll take a closer look at them in a future video as well. Last thing I want to mention here about carbon in this video is this idea of macromolecules. Okay, so small molecules are going to be used to build bigger molecules. Okay, often those small molecules are what we call monomers. That's like the building unit. And for each of these, and you can refer back to that chart on the previous slide here in the video, or in CK12, that's the same chart out of your textbook. Monomers, we start joining monomers, monomer plus monomer, the building blocks, kind of like individual Lego pieces, and that's going to give us a big molecule called a polymer. Mono meaning one, poly meaning many. Okay, how does our body build polymers, build them up and tear them down and reuse them just like you would a Lego set? You put the bricks together and then you build something, but then you might want something else. You tear them back down and build something else. Okay, to put them together, that process, and I want you to be familiar with this, circle this, highlight this in your notes, is dehydration synthesis. What's dehydrate mean? Okay, means you're dehydrated, you're lacking in water, or to take out of water. Synthesis, the root word syn there, S-Y-N, means to join or put together. So we're going to put together by dehydrating or taking out of water. And I'll show you this in future videos. But we take the monomers. Okay, for example, table sugar is actually a disaccharide. So if you take a glucose and a glucose, okay, you have two monomers. How do we join these together? We take the OH group, which is an oxygen and a hydrogen, and we take this hydrogen off of that oxygen. So there was a bond there, and there's a bond here. Okay, we take out an HOH, okay, which is an H2O. Okay, so we take a water out. And now those two monomers are linked, okay, by a covalent bond with a little oxygen in the middle there. Okay, so we took out of water, dehydrated, to put together, synthesize a bigger molecule. And then this can just keep going and going. You keep adding more and more, sometimes hundreds of them to this. What happens when we need to use one of those sugars for energy in cellular respiration? We have enzymes that will come in here and cleave these bonds, cleave or cut, okay, through a process called hydrolysis. Okay, again, hydro means water, lysis means splitting. Okay, so if you look down here, here is our polymer, okay, or our disaccharide, or our table sugar. Okay, we're going to add a water back in. Okay, so that bond here is broken. We put an H back on that O and an OH over here, and now these monomers are broken apart from each other. Okay, so understand dehydration synthesis is how we take two small building blocks in organic compounds and put them together by taking out of water. How do we break them apart? We put the water back in and it breaks them apart. Okay. When we look at specific examples in the next couple videos here, I'll show you specifically in specific organic compounds how that happens, and hopefully you'll begin to understand that a little bit better. Thank you. This is the end of this part 2, and part 3 we'll take a look at proteins and possibly lipids.